Hello everyone and welcome to another video, and today there's no music because I don't think that this video deserves any music because actually I am quite pissed off. And so if you haven't heard, basically today there was a big dump of Final Fantasy news, and specifically Final Fantasy 15, and I would consider this information to be a dump mainly because that's kind of where it belongs. So if you're not familiar, Final Fantasy 15 has, and I don't know who in the Final Fantasy community doesn't know this by now, but 15 has had a rather kind of rough development. It has been in development for so long, it wasn't entirely sure what was going on with it. It was originally Final Fantasy 13 Versus, something that was supposed to be kind of a spin-off of Final Fantasy 13 before finally becoming Final Fantasy 15, its own Final Fantasy game, and it took a long time to come to uh, basically for it to come out. Now, Nomura was kind of the head of the project for the longest time, and they were using a Luminous engine, a in-house engine that was developed by Square Enix that was supposed to be next generation, it was supposed to be high quality, and it was supposed to be used for many years. Now, yesterday, and I talked about this on stream, there was the news that came out that apparently Luminous Studio, well, it had lost a whole bunch of money, approximately, I do believe, somewhere around $33 million that was lost. And I can guess that's because, well, creating a brand new high quality engine just didn't end up working out that well for Square Enix. It was very difficult for them to get their monies back out of it, because if you look, Kingdom Hearts 3 as well as I do believe Dragon Quest 11 too were both made on Unreal 4. I know Kingdom Hearts 3 is. I'm not entirely sure of Dragon Quest because I'm just not the biggest Dragon Quest fan. But needless to say, their development has gone what has felt like much smoother than Final Fantasy 15 ever did. And 15, I'm going to just say right now, 15 is a game that I actually don't hate like a whole bunch of other people do. For one thing, I think the criticism that the main characters look like a boy band, seriously guys, grow up. Second of all, in terms of the world is actually very beautiful for the part that was developed, and you can tell pretty much about when the money stopped rolling in and they were basically told to finish the game. I would have been really interested to see what Final Fantasy 15 would have looked like had all of the content been completed. Now, the thing about that is that, well, obviously it was just something where I feel like Final Fantasy 15 was very much a problem of this splendor that somebody wanted somewhere, and they wanted to make it the biggest, the highest, prettiest, the most realistic looking yep, still a fantasy-based Final Fantasy ever that had come along. And the problem with that is that when you just have these big ambitions, sometimes a project's collapse is kind of just on top of itself. And that is a big problem because, this is Final Fantasy is kind of the flagship title for Square Enix. Yes, they have Dragon Quest, and Dragon Quest is very popular in Japan and is, starting to be proven that it's popular elsewhere. Honestly, Final Fantasy has just kind of been the forefront of Square Enix for the many years now. And there have been a lot of Final Fantasies that have a rough relationship with a lot of the community, partially because the Final Fantasy community is not exactly what I would call the best. I mean, there are a lot of video game communities that are bad out there, but Final Fantasy kind of goes out of its way, or at least it feels like a lot of fans go out of the way to just be toxic and say, oh my god, that is just the worst thing ever. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing bad. And it's like, fuck off, you guys. Like, it always pissed me off when people were that bad about Final Fantasy 13 because while music is subjective, I think that the music in pretty much every Final Fantasy is, like, very beautiful. And they have really just a lot of talented people. Say what you will about the gameplay. Maybe you didn't like that 13, had a different system, and different is bad. But regardless, there are some good things about every Final Fantasy, and there are some great things about every Final Fantasy, and there are some things that need to be improved about every Final Fantasy. But today came the news that a lot of news that I was just considering really disappointing. For one thing, most of the DLCs that were planned for Final Fantasy 15 are canceled. And again, for anybody who wants to comment, oh, this should have all been in the original game, and I mean, fine, that can be a point, but you have to realize that the game would have taken longer to come out. It's not like you just snap a finger and all of this content magically appears, but hey, I guess some gamers think that. But yes, there were 4 DLCs that were going to be planned for Episode Arden, Episode Aranea, Episode Lunafreya, and Episode Noctis. 3 of them have now been cancelled. Episode Aranea, Episode Lunafreya, and Episode Noctis have all been cancelled completely. Episode Arden looks to be finished, so it will be launching in March of 2019. And while I have checked out the trailer for it, and it looks, really cool, it's a new character to play as and kind of a different story and filling in the backstory that I feel was really missing. It is very disappointing to hear that a ton of others that I was really interested in are just never going to see the light of day at all. Aranea, Lunafreya, and another Noctis episode would have been really interesting to see. I would have really been interested to see that expanded content, and this just feels like Final Fantasy 15 is just kind of getting the death sentence, which I don't think is fair. 15 had a really kind of neat world that was a mix of real and fantasy. It had this really neat history that is kind of mostly alluded to that we just, kind of never get to see. I would have really liked to have seen, a lot of the battles between the summons that happened a long time ago. Like, there's a lot in 15 that is really good. The other thing that was incredibly disappointing was Tabata, Hajime Tabata, is leaving Square Enix and Luminous Productions. Tabata, regardless of your relationship, whether you like Type O or Final Fantasy 15, he is a very hard worker. I feel like he was doing his best with what was given to him. He was essentially, put on Final Fantasy 15 as the director after removing Nomura, and I think director is the lead game designer, whatever. But the point is Tabata got put into a situation, and I think he always does the best of with what he is given. And while I wish Tabata the best on his future, I'm extremely disappointed to see this going off, because Square Enix is kind of in this position right now where I don't feel like they're in a good position at all. And the Comrades stuff, the crossover between Final Fantasy 15 and 14, I couldn't give less of 2 craps about, because Comrades has just not that interesting to me, and Final Fantasy 14 is its own thing, and it gets collaborations, and this is just something that feels like, well, you're not getting the DLC, but you can have this, I guess. Okay, alright, whatever. But here's the thing. Let me tie this back into the game that most of my viewers play, which is Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. A couple of months ago, or like a month ago or whatever, when I was incredibly shocked when the lead producer of the JP side of FFBE said in a address that they had been given notes from higher up executives that there was supposed to be less tickets giving it out to players, and instead we were supposed to get these tickets that have expiration dates on them. And yeah, it was something that I really hated at the time, and I still don't like, because it's essentially taking away, like tickets and getting on banner stuff, and it feels like it's just, pushing an agenda. But I was really shocked about, just flat out like saying that it's the executive's fault, because that just doesn't happen. Normally, when you're in a subordinate position, you don't say fuck you to your boss. Well, YouTube's not my boss, but I could tell them fuck you right now. But this is starting to paint a better picture of what is going on in Brave Exvius. Alum and Gummy, or Gimme, or however you want to say it, there is something really, really important to note here, and that is that, when we're talking about who's to blame for this kind of stuff, I think a lot of people have this knee-jerk reaction of just looking who's the first name that they can see. And that is, Tabata, Nomura, and I've done it too. I think we've all done it, but we could do a little better to start realizing that it's probably the executives that are pulling the strings on a lot of this. I'm not saying that given the chance, Gimme and Alan wouldn't make the same decisions, but I am saying that recently it seems like with some of the odd decisions in the game to nerf rates or decrease stuff, it seems like there's a couple of things motivating this. One, the amount of money that has now been officially announced, lost on Luminous. Luminous, which is an engine that is probably dead in the water right now. I really don't see Square Enix forcing, or while they've developed Luminous, I just don't see them long-term relying on it. Because while they need to get their money's worth out of it, spending more time on a system that's essentially taken since the PS3 era to really build and come out and be good, and it's actually just, it's impressive. Final Fantasy 15, I say, looks, pretty damn great, especially running on a PS4 Pro or an Xbox One X, but, or PC too, shouldn't forget PC, sorry PC people. But yeah, I'm starting to get a better picture of what exactly is going on at Square Enix. For one thing, it looks like creatively there isn't really much freedom. Something I love about Sony right now. Say what you will about Sony not letting crossplay or anything, but Sony is giving a fair amount of freedom to their developers to make creative new or do fun stuff that they really like. Giving Guerrilla Games saying, "Hey, make Horizon Zero Dawn. Hey, make a new God of War and make it like story driven and like all of this." For the Insomniac, yeah, go take the Spider-Man license, have fun. All three of those have been absolutely incredible, and taking a look at Final Fantasy's more recent history, it doesn't feel like there's so much of a creativity as there is just a company mandate. And again, that is the executives and directors probably of Square Enix and, the board of maybe trustees or the investors, right? Like all of these people who pull a lot of the strings behind the scenes that we never see. And if you're interested, you can go to Square Enix Holdings. You can type in Square Enix directors and you can find out exactly who. You can find that the president and representative director is Yosuke Matsuda. He is one of the higher-ups that is probably making a lot of the decisions that affects the games that we love. So for one thing, I would call on recently to maybe cut down a little bit on the toxicity about Final Fantasy games. For one thing, the creative directors just don't feel... I feel pretty confident making the statement that they're creatively, there's just really no freedom at Square Enix right now, which could be a lot of different things, and I'm not going to go into that, not in this video anyway. The second thing I would do is, stop blaming the first title that you see on a game. I get it, Alum, and yeah, I am definitely a person who is like, yeah, Alum, fuck, man, come on. For a lot of the in-game stuff for challenges and everything, but banners, starting to feel a little bit more like I am really got to be just saying the executives are pulling a lot more of the strings than I even have thought. And that there is a real kind of fear at Square Enix right now about just how much money they've lost on Luminous, and just anytime, a fairly high-up director leaves a company, it's a pretty big deal. Kojima left Konami because of conditions, and I feel like while Tabata's going away message was fairly positive and fairly fairly positive and professional, I think that it's very clear that working conditions are not the best at Square Enix, and we've seen a lot of people leave Square Enix over the I don't know, the last 10 years or so. Like, it's quite a thing, and I think personally, if I can say a message to Square Enix, not that you will ever see this because directors are so out of touch with, I think, maybe not even necessarily the fan base, but just really out of touch with kind of reality at times and just thinking about that dollar value. I would really say to Square Enix to get your shit together and give your there is an example out there of companies that have made really good decisions about some stuff creatively when it comes to games. You'd be surprised when you give that kind of freedom to people and let them follow their passions, the amazing products they can come out with. And does it make me worried about Square Enix games? No, but it does make me a little worried that if anything is going to affect the lifespan of these franchises right now, it seems like bad executive decisions are probably going to be that thing. And so, brave Exvius people, both on the global and the JP side, definitely take a look and think about who might really be behind a lot of the decisions going on. But yeah, because regardless, I feel like Gimme, Gummy, Alum, they all answer to the big guys, and those are Square Enix. So yes, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Hopefully we'll have a little bit better information, but this was kind of a rough day as a Final Fantasy fan because I haven't been super happy with a lot of the fan base who just can't be happy with anything, it feels like. And I'm not super happy with the way Square Enix is going right now. Who knows? Maybe Final Fantasy 15 will actually be the Final Fantasy. There's a reason for that name. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.